Good morning, it's Anthony Blackburn from Golf in Society. As you know, I'm the founder of a social enterprise with a mission to transform the lives of our ageing population by introducing them to the health and well-being benefits of golf clubs. And over the years, I've had the privilege of meeting some amazing people in my social enterprise, and some of the most inspirational individuals I've met have been the carers that we support, because a lot of people see the golfers out and about on the golf course and they see that as how Golf in Society transforms lives. But what they don't often see is what goes on behind the scenes in the clubhouses and in conversations and great chats with the most amazing unsung heroes of society, and that's the unpaid carers. And I'm privileged this morning to be here in conversation with Linda Barnes, who's the author of a blog called Telling Tales, and it's titled From Wife to Carer. And if ever you want an insight into what it's like as a wife that, eventually, unfortunately has to take up the role of being a carer, then it's the most wonderful, wonderful account of what it's like every day, and definitely worth signing up to that blog. So without further ado, Linda, welcome.
Hi, Anthony. Good morning.
As you know, we've embarked on this exciting project at the minute, which is basically to reimagine golf clubs as outpatient clinics. So basically, it's a matter of everything we've learned so far together in terms of how we inspire people to enjoy activity, give them a great time out, and also create that space where carers can feel comfortable, better supported, and more resilient. That's sort of been the inspiration behind it. And this project is going to give us the chance to design a service around you, your partner, to make sure that we give you an opportunity to enjoy life to the best you can whilst living with a diagnosis, in this instance, dementia. But most importantly as well is getting carers to build up their personal well-being, their mental and physical health, and also feeling more resilient and better supported, that as they go along their journey with the diagnosis, there's someone there for them. There's a conversation that can happen there for them. They don't feel alone. So the starting point really for me is to say very openly to you, how have you found navigating the sort of referral pathway since you were, as a family, diagnosed with dementia, and also the health system generally? How have you found that?
Well, Ken was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's disease 7 years ago now. And I have a history of being a nurse for 30 years. And with a diagnosis like that, I really thought that the cavalry would arrive. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And it wasn't the case for anybody that I knew in our similar situation at that time. Ken's diagnosis is a terminal diagnosis. He didn't get any support from anywhere really in the beginning. We were sent to the memory clinic and had to really fight to actually be seen and to have anybody and be believed. I think that's the word I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Ken started to do odd things. He'd been a builder all his life, but he forgot how to measure. He forgot how to tell the time. Things that a normal 52-year-old shouldn't be forgetting.
Yeah.
His short-term memory was fine. He knew who the Queen was. He knew all about general situations. But there were these odd factors that I thought, this is a bit strange. Ken went to see the GP because I was worried and said, you really need to go and discuss this with someone. The GP did the dementia checks, asked him some questions. He got 99% of them right, but the one that he didn't get right was the one to do with numbers.
Oh, right.
You have to take 7 away from 100 and continue. He couldn't take 7 away from 100 at all. Anyway, the GP said, it's just stress and anxiety. Don't worry about it. You're fine. And sent him back. So Ken was given a very much a false a false understanding of the situation, really.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
thought that I was the one making a fuss.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what he felt. So 6 months on, things were getting worse. He was making silly mistakes in the office that he would never have done. And the bookkeeper kept covering up for him, but he was doing things that weren't quite right. And he had a very strong team around him. And they knew Ken wasn't acting as he should do. So we went on holiday, we went on a cruise, and Ken couldn't remember the room number. He couldn't remember his phone number. Somebody asked how old he was. He couldn't remember how old he was. Thought, this is very odd. And we had a conversation and said, we're going back to the GP. I'm coming with you, which I did. I was quite forthright in that consultation. I said, Ken's got acalculia. He's forgotten how to deal with numbers. We had a very inexperienced GP who really didn't know what to do with us, but eventually agreed that we needed a referral to the memory clinic. At that time, I thought Ken has either got a diagnosis of dementia or he's got a brain tumour.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So we went to the memory clinic, and the memory clinic it was a service set up for old people. Ken was 52. I can remember sitting in that waiting area, looking around me, thinking, this is not the right place for Ken to be. It's not. He shouldn't be in a older services situation. When we saw the nurse, she did some initial psychometric tests. And again, Ken was scoring very high until he got to the mathematical bits. And we really felt like we were wasting their time.
Yes.
We really did. And Ken went for another test and I was excluded. So I'm not quite sure what went on with that one, but he obviously didn't perform terribly well, because the outcome was that they would speak to the consultant and see whether any further action needed to be taken. We waited for about 3 weeks and heard nothing. And then we were invited back again for some more psychometric tests. And again, it was the same area that Ken was failing on. We got to see a consultant eventually, and because of my insistence more than anything else, Ken was sent for a CT scan. The CT scan showed a normal sized brain, but the consultant had taken on board what I'd said, and so decided that Ken would have a PET scan. So we waited a few weeks for that, for quite a few weeks, went to Leeds for the PET scan, and that showed that Ken had damage to the left parietal lobe of the brain, which is responsible for numeracy.
Right.
There was a long wait before we actually got that information. There were problems at the memory clinic. At that time, there was some restructuring going on with the health authority. There was nobody that I kept phoning every week to try and get some sort of information, and was constantly told, we will get back in touch with you. Eventually, we saw the consultant, who basically just read out the radiographer's report, said that it shows the likelihood of Alzheimer's disease. And with the information that he got, he felt that that was enough to make a diagnosis. Did we want to start on tablets? And that was about it. Ken, I just said, yes, of course, we want to start on medication. The medication doesn't stop the disease process, but it can slow it down. And so Ken started on some Ariceps tablets. We were under their wing until he was titrated up to the dose. And then after that, we were told that you will be, this is just a diagnostic service, you will be under the care of the GP. So I rang the GP and we made an appointment to go and see him. By this time, Ken was really depressed, very low in mood. He'd just got this dreadful diagnosis, but nobody was supporting him at all. I was desperately trying to find services to access, found it very difficult. I couldn't, there seemed to be nothing, and I just thought the GP might be able to help us. So we went along to the GP. He really didn't have a clue what to do with us. Started Ken on some antidepressants, and said he would look into it. We went back again to see him, and he just basically said, there's dementia forward that we can refer you to, but there's no specific areas for young onset dementia in this area. So Dementia Forward are a charity, and I rang them. Again, there was very little provision at that time for young onset. And Ken was still quite high functioning. He needed somebody to explain what was going to be happening. And I think we've said before, we didn't want the full chapter and verse. We just wanted the next chapter, please, just to give us some hope.
Yeah.
So it was not an easy process, and I was really very disappointed that there wasn't nothing there to support us. I thought there might be some cognitive stimulation classes. I thought there might be something that would help us to do the best that we could with the diagnosis that we'd got.
And I think it's quite interesting that you say that in terms of that frustration that there wasn't as much out there as you possibly thought there was. And this is someone that's obviously worked within the NHS system itself. So I think if you can imagine what it's like for someone who's actually worked outside of that and hasn't been able to have that understanding of how to navigate it.
Well, I was a practice nurse for 15 years before Ken got his diagnosis. Well, I was still working at the time, but I didn't have I can't remember having any training or any input about dementia particularly. I don't remember we used to do well-man checks. We used to do heart disease checks, diabetes checks. I don't remember anything cognitive at all.
No.
And it was only because I was a little bit more aware of dementia as a disease that I pushed to get Ken anything at all, really. Anyway, the journey went on, and the disease deteriorates over time, and during that time, I've made it mission, Ken and I, to improve understanding of young onset dementia. So instead of us benefiting from the services, we found that we were informing services about young onset dementia. You'd look at Ken at that time. He could still verbalise. He was tall and strong and a good-looking chap. People really struggled to believe that there was anything wrong with him. If I got another person telling me they forget the keys or they forget people's name, honestly, I'd be a millionaire if everybody gave me a penny for each time I was told. And that is it's a disease. It's a physical disease, and yet people, because they can't see it, don't believe it. It's one of those invisible illnesses until it gets to the later stage, and then it's more obvious.
Linda, that is a fantastic start to our conversation together. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, Linda, thank you. That's been a great start to the conversation. Now we're going to move on to what I think is quite an exciting bit. We've got a blank canvas in front of us. We've got a chance with this current pilot project to reimagine and redesign a 12-week program of support for you in your role as a human being, as a wife, and as a carer, and also for that of your husband, and for it to happen simultaneously at the most amazing golf clubs near you, with all the beautiful green space, with all the built infrastructure, with great people around you. And we've got a chance now to take that beautiful infrastructure and fill it with great services that support you to live that happier, healthier life you and your partner deserve. So with that blank canvas in front of you, especially from your perspective in your role, what would be the first things that you would put on that piece of blank canvas?
Well, I think one of the things that carers struggle with to start with is loss of identity. I think that's massive. I think suddenly what their plans were, where they wanted to go in the future, suddenly evaporate. Very often carers have to give up their profession or their job because caring for someone is a full-time job in itself. And often people can't afford the care. Their salary doesn't cover the cost of the care. So that's why many people stop their job, which has a massive effect on well-being, I think. I think that Anthony has got a brilliant idea, and I wish we had that opportunity earlier. If we had known that we could go somewhere where people understood, where people were supportive, where we didn't feel on our own, where people were sharing experiences and learning from each other, I think that is one of the key factors for carers. And being in a lovely surrounding instead of a dingy room somewhere is a massive difference. Makes a massive difference. Knowing that carers are leaving their charges in safe hands is another huge consideration. Knowing that it's a shared but different experience. So you could go along to a golf club, you can have a nice time and know that your loved ones are having an equally nice time but doing different things. I think that would be wonderful. Every carer is different, every situation is different, and everybody will have different needs. But I think being together, having the opportunity to talk to each other, share nice experiences, maybe just a cup of tea, but maybe something a bit more active or something that would improve well-being would be fabulous. Even just quiet spaces, just somewhere where you can just be quiet and not have all the just forget about dementia for a little while would be massive.
And I think it's quite interesting you mentioned that, Linda, because I've noticed you here at Rudding Park that you've just taken Hetty, your dog, and just taken Hetty for a walk around the grounds and just found that opportunity to enjoy that beautiful green space with the family pet, which I know you find very therapeutic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Anthony's vision is one where it's inclusive. So there's going to be things that will happen for everybody, whatever stage of the dementia. So some things that are suitable for some people may not be for others, but it will be tailored for each individual person so that they get the best out of it. I think if we can go somewhere and both come back happy, I think we can cope with the rest of the day.
Yeah. With what you know now, if you'd known it back then, if these types of services had been available when you were doing that initial desktop research in terms of what was available, where sport was mentioned, where these spaces, where these sort of wellbeing events for carers, if that had all been sort of mentioned in some way or form as part of your initial information pack, do you think it's something that you would have potentially reached out and been interested in?
We would have grabbed it with both hands very tightly. Absolutely. I think Ken is he's a man's man. He doesn't like singing about the White Cliffs of Dover. He doesn't read or write, so he can't do, and he hates crafting. Sport has been at least something because of the muscle memory he can still actively enjoy. He's not going to ever be the best golfer, but that doesn't matter. He is physically involved and experiencing. The other thing is, I think it's not pussyfooting around the situation. The support isn't in your face. Ken is just guided. He doesn't really realise that he's being guided. It's not like a carer and being cared for situation. It's experience. I think that the support workers get just as much fun out of it as the people that they care for.
Totally agree. And I think it's fascinating for me because when we met recently over a coffee, I called you and your fellow carers the most amazing project managers I've ever known in my life. Because to manage the complexity of life for yourself, for your family, and for your loved one with a diagnosis is nothing more than inspirational when I see it being done. And I think sometimes what I've also realised is when I give a compliment, a lot of carers can't take the compliment. And I don't know whether that's because of they are so high functioning and highly focused that taking that moment to actually think about their own emotions sometimes can be a little bit, I don't know, but often I've made many ladies cry in their role as a carer, not meaning to, but just because we've given them that kind word or compliment.
Yeah, I think that's very true because carers don't get a lot of recognition, and I think that perhaps in this new experience, they probably will be valued, which is massive because many people do feel, like I said at the very start, that they don't matter, and people think they'll just get on with it and don't realise the physical and emotional problems that are attached to seeing your loved one gradually, very slowly, becoming somebody else.
Right, Linda, this has been a great conversation so far. And moving on to your opportunity to share your tips and advice and your voice, really, because as you know, whenever I speak to the families we support, I really do like at every opportunity to give them the opportunity to share their voice and have their voice heard whenever I get the opportunity to share that with an audience. And today, really, with everything we've discussed this morning, from the challenges of living with the dementia in terms of through to your first ideas on what the best type of support program would look like within our new venture, I'd now like to give you the opportunity just to maybe highlight a few tips and advice that you would give to people out there working in the health and social care space, and also possibly, the general wider community about how they can make that whole life with a diagnosis better for you, your partner, and families like that.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. I would say I think it's really important that the person with dementia is involved in the conversations. We've had recent appointments where Ken has been completely ignored, which is not the. We shouldn't be doing that at all. Although I try and draw Ken in, and he has problems, he's got primary progressive aphasia, so he doesn't speak. He has some understanding of what's being said, and he knows that people are talking about him. So really, questions, although the carer is likely to answer, should be addressed to Ken or the person with dementia, if at all possible. And I think it's very frustrating. I would hate to be in a situation if I was sat and people were talking about me and I wasn't being involved. So that, for health professionals on all levels, I think that is something that needs to be addressed, not by everybody, but by some people who talk above the understanding levels of somebody with dementia. I think it's a mark of respect more than anything else. I spoke to medical students last week on a Zoom call. I was involved to try and help them understand a little bit more about what it's like living with dementia in the family, and how it affects individuals within that family group. And I think more care needs to be taken to look after not just the person with dementia, but the other members of the family as well. I think there is very little for carers. There is even less for family members. And certainly my husband's dementia has affected his son and his daughter equally as much as me. And I think that they are very much forgotten. I think if somebody, for instance, with young dementia, if somebody comes to you with memory problems or can't remember how to tell the time, think a little bit deeper than anxiety and depression. Think, what is it? This is quite unusual. And I feel very strongly that certainly when Ken was diagnosed, there is very little understanding of dementia in general within the health professional sector.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very good.
I think it's people understand more now, 7 years on, but I still think it needs to be very much a part of training for every type of health professional, from occupational therapists to physiotherapists to practice nurses to GPs, because the signs and symptoms are different for everybody. And I know that makes things more complicated, but it should trigger some thought that perhaps this person has got a form of dementia, rather than just stressed.
Can I just ask a question as well, in terms of, obviously there's a number of different hospital or GP appointments that you have to attend for yourself and also for Ken. Do you find that it's, I really want to understand how Ken finds it in those environments where he's going to hospital environments or GP surgery. Is he comfortable in those environments, or does he find it stressful or anxious? How does he feel?
I think you're absolutely right. I think even parking in those situations can be a stress before you even get into the hospital or wherever it is that you're going. I think that's a big thing, and I think certainly with the masks and everything else, that has been an added complication. It's been very difficult. That one consultant insisted Ken wore a mask. His glasses steamed up. He was really very, very uncomfortable. I think if it was a more relaxed situation where you could see outside and not get lost down dark corridors, I think that could be a real benefit. Certainly, it would help the carers, because stress and anxiety is difficult to deal with somebody with dementia, and it's so easy to get lost in a hospital. From my experience, it can be.
As someone who's experienced navigating hospitals,
exactly. It's very difficult. We went for an appointment a few weeks ago, and all the signage has changed since the pandemic in our local hospital. I was completely lost. I was sent by two different people in the wrong direction. By the time we got to the appointment, I was completely stressed. Ken was picking up on that stress. It wasn't a good experience at all. I think if you could walk into somewhere that's friendly and homely and comfortable, I think that would be a massive improvement.
Well, that is a fantastic tip to end on. Linda, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for taking your time.
Well,
luckily, we've got the sun shining here at Rudding Park today. And all this is happening at a golf club. And it just shows that everything we do at Golf in Society, we put golf clubs at the heart of the local community, whether it be having conversations here, whether it be golfing outside with our people who are enjoying their sport fix with a diagnosis, or whether it be supporting carers. It all happens at local golf clubs. And amazing people like Linda are the reason that my desire burns brighter than ever to make a difference to these amazing ladies and unsung heroes of society who, without them, we would be lost. So, Linda, thank you very much.
And thank you for having such inspirational ideas.
We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going.
Keep it going.
Take care.
That's it.